funny you should ask that very question, because my talk is going to be about realizing the recommendations. As Roger said, I spent my last job in the Department of Energy was Deputy Director of the Office of Science. I did that for 9 years. 3 of the 4 final years, I was acting director, and before that, I was the director of the Basic Energy Sciences program for 12 years. So in those 21 years, I learned a little bit about taking community recommendations and turning them into something real. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. So building the case requires a few things, and I've actually listed things in the way that I think about them. One is that the case has to be compelling, it has to be exciting, it has to be unassailable, and it has to be widely supported. And oh yes, it would help if you got a little help from your friends. So we're going to do a little mini review here. Phil talked about this earlier. The conclusions of the report are that the science is important, check, many applications. The community is large but fragmented. There's no cross-agency coordination, and the U.S. has lost dominance. These 5 characteristics can be ascribed to many initiatives that are trying to come forward in the United States today, wannabe initiatives. So those are interesting, they're required, but they're not sufficient. As I said a minute ago, the case has to be very compelling, including compelling in the sense of economic and national security. Why does the U.S. have to do this rather than something else? It has to be exciting. Staffers at OMB, staffers on the Hill will still respond to something exciting, even in difficult times. And I've watched it personally over 20 years that I was in DOE. The case has to be unassailable. There have to be no chinks in the armor, because if there are, they will come and get you for them. And it has to be widely supported. I'm gonna actually read something from a science article that was written in 1996, less than a year after I started at DOE, about neutron scattering. It was written by Andrew Lawler in August of 1996. And it starts out, I will never forget these words, selling big US science projects is tough these days. Just ask the small and fractious community of US scientists who examine the structure of materials by bombarding them with neutrons. I will never forget the phrase, small and fractious community. That's not what you want to be. And you can look at various communities in the United States, various science communities, and watch how the small and fractious nature of them, sometimes large and fractious nature of them, prevented them from going forward for many years. The SSC was terminated 20 years ago or more now, and it really took the high energy physics community until quite recently, until the most recent HEPAP P5 report a couple of years ago, to bond together in common cause. So if you are a small and fractious community, you needn't go further. And later on, he goes on to say that subgroups or even institutions traditionally wage bitter battles, I love a lot of alliteration there, bitter battles for limited research resources. The squabbling in turn has made it hard for neutron scientists to speak with one voice, and the price for that lack of unity has been weakened political clout. So this is a small community, and you have to come together in common cause. So let's look at the recommendations now on the recommendation side. Organize the stakeholders, engage them, develop a multi-agency strategy. Typically, in normal times in the United States, the Office of Science and Technology Policy does this for agencies, or the National Science and Technology Council, NSTC or OSTP. Right now, OSTP has not been built back up since the days of Obama administration, and so communities, professional society, other groups are forced to take over and do this. Normally, a single agency would not take on the responsibility of doing this coordination, but in some cases, if there is a vacuum, an absence of the folks who would normally do this, agencies or communities have to band together and do this. You don't want to wait, you want to move on. The next couple of recommendations: build one or more major facilities. maybe that's getting a little bit out of your out in front of the headlights. Create programs for technology development and research engagement, including at international facilities, and that I strongly agree with. So here are my observations on this report. They're very short. First, this is an extremely significant report that recommends important next steps required to create the case for programs, instrumentation, and facility development. And all three of those are important. You want to create programs, instrumentation, and develop facilities. DOE's Office of Science has a lot of experience acting on such recommendations and has had a few successes even in difficult times. And so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to show you the suite of Office of Science facilities and go through some of the things that each facility had to go through to get itself on this postcard. In 2017, the Office of Science has 27 facilities. Each has its own story, and all of the stories tend to be different, and each story for creation of a facility has to be tailored to the time and the circumstances that you live in. The Office of Basic Energy Sciences has 12 of these, 12 of the 27, and I was actually around and helped create them, upgrade them, build new ones, build greenfield ones, so I know a little bit about this. In many or most cases, the facilities shown on the postage stamp postcard were out-of-the-box thinking. That is, one didn't think of just building a new bricks and mortar facility. And so let me go through some of the ways in which these facilities came to be. Some of these facilities were partially or totally rebuilt using the existing infrastructure and the physical structure. All the computers, ESNet, the Energy Sciences Network, CBAF, the Advanced Light Source, SSRL, the High Flux Isotope Reactor, among them. So a lot of these didn't start out as greenfield. Second, facilities can go from in-house to partially or totally open. So if there's something that exists now that is only being used by the folks at the institution, that facility can be opened up. Two examples are the Advanced Test Facility at Brookhaven and the High Flux Isotope Reactor, which was commissioned in the mid-1960s for in-house use by folks at Oak Ridge National Laboratory and now is a wide open user facility. Facilities can take a very long time from the first call to commissioning. The spallation neutron source took 20 years, or they can be fast-tracked. And remember the criteria for fast-tracking. They have to be compelling, exciting, unassailable, widely supported, and they have to have a little help from friends. The 5 nanoscale science research centers in BES tacked along behind the wave of the National Nanotechnology Initiative and were essentially conceived of and commissioned in less than 10 years, which is remarkable. Computers are the same. They came along very fast. Next, facilities can be helped out by friends. That could be state investments. It could even be donor investments, and we have examples of both of those. So there is no single secret path. Each story is different, and each has to be tailored to the time and the circumstances in which they live. Rarely, though, if you look at the chart, rarely are facilities, big facilities, billion-dollar class or many, many hundreds of millions of dollar class facilities built greenfield without some head start. So here's what I would do if I were still in the Department of Energy and thinking a lot about making this go. Here's some characteristics of the creation of programs, instrumentation, and facilities. First, you have to build a rigorous scientific and technical case. And you might say, well, this report does it. No, not yet. What you have to do is gather together the actual workers in the field and come up with very detailed scientific case, the hottest science experiments. And every facility in the Office of Science that we showed on the postcard had those cases built for them. Next, you have to create a network of relevant agencies and researchers in those agencies in order to execute the first recommendation. And Normally, OSTP would do this, but there is no OSTP right now, and so some agency has to take the lead. It was recommended that DOE do it. It's possible that DOE could do that. I could see that happening. Third, you have to describe and detail the distinct mission needs of each federal agency and each non-federal stakeholder or sponsor. That is, what you're doing is describing a national program that encompasses multiple science disciplines and multiple technology applications. This really helps to sell an initiative inside the United States, both in the administration and in Congress. Fourth, you want to expand the reach of U.S. researchers right now. Don't wait. Get the community to be active with exciting science coming out. That can be opening up facilities that exist that aren't open. It can be shipping them overseas to use facilities that are there, but get the community active right now. And finally, craft realistic proposals for next steps. Ensure that there's total alignment of the community and budget for success. And what I mean by that is if you overreach, the easiest thing to do if you're a Fed inside an agency is to decline a proposal that's over budgeted, that you simply can't afford, dead on arrival. Make sure that you match what you want to do to something that the agency is able to do. If you don't do that, it's gone. And I've seen that happen over and over again in every single major program office in the Office of Science. So if you don't work with the agency, if you don't understand what they can and can't do, you will not be successful. So it's actually pretty simple to take these recommendations and to turn them into something real if you just know the tricks and work hard. Oh, by the way, this is a good laser pointer. The one on here, I couldn't even get my cats to chase.